Pfizer and another Mother for Peace to help out with the questioning. We would like for, if there's press here, if you would identify yourself as such, and if you would please raise your hand first and then stand with your questions, because we don't have a lot of microphones to pass around.
Yes, you have. Good evening. I'm sorry if you can't hear me. It's awkward. So, and excuse me for my ignorance here because, I don't know, there's a lot of stuff that I don't know. But you were mentioning, Al-Qaeda, and I just don't think that I understand the concept of Al-Qaeda. Like, I hear about it in Pakistan, I hear about it in Iraq, I hear about it, now in Yemen, and it's like, what is this thing? Like, it's, and I'm sorry, I understand I must sound incredibly ignorant, but if you could just elucidate, that would be fantastic.
I think it's a great question. Al-Qaeda is more like a brand more than anything else. That's a good way to start to understand it. They're very different everywhere in Pakistan and Yemen and wherever.
Can you hear back there?
Yeah, Jeb, I think it'd be better if you use the microphone, please. Yeah.
Can you hear me in that? Good? Okay. I think Al-Qaeda is more of a brand than anything else when you talk about it generally. No Al-Qaeda branch is the same, I guess you could say. But I do know more about the Yemen branch than any others, more than any others. And in Yemen, people say they're the strongest branch of Al-Qaeda of all the branches in, so there's Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, Al-Qaeda core, Al-Qaeda, whatever. I guess that's true. I don't really know, to be honest with you. But I think it just means, if we want to talk about it in terms of belief system, maybe a Salafi ideology, which would mean a radical religious belief that, it's so hard to beat down sometimes, a radical religious belief that is very anti-Shia and also anti-West and uses violence to enforce their belief system or carry out their beliefs. That's probably the easiest way to put it without getting inaccurate or wrong.
Why are they anti-Shia?
They're, as far as they're concerned, to elevate the prophet's family above the status of even the prophet himself and his family, to elevate them to a status of reference, or they would argue elevate them to a status that's more than human, is equivalent to blasphemy. That no one should be on the same level as God, that there's distinction.
Another question for Jeb. The journalist that you mentioned who reported on the drone strike in Yemen, why do you think it was so important for the Obama administration that he remain in jail?
You would hope that he sincerely believes that this person was a danger or a threat to Americans or American interests. Maybe, depends on how cynical you are. You could think that he was embarrassed. You could think that maybe he had reason. Someone told him, very seriously, he's bad, and then he made the call. Or, you could take the cynical approach. But you could, Medea, if you want to.
I would take the cynical approach.
Okay.
I don't care who answers it, you might both have some input. I know the CIA has the their drone base in Saudi Arabia, where they're launching the attacks on Yemen. I guess there were another 3 drone strikes in Yemen last week. What is the frequency of these the drone attacks? And also, isn't there any kind of pushback from Yemen and from some of the other countries there against the Saudis, and how they're basically facilitating these attacks?
Okay. Most of my Yemeni friends are very aware of the role of the Saudis in facilitating the U.S. in their certain attacks across the Arab and Muslim world, and also the Saudis themselves, which we know now because of the reporting by Anna Craig, are bombing Yemen as well. I don't know if you remember in 2009 they made an incursion into northern Yemen to fight the Houthi rebels. So I know for the majority of the Yemenis, they're very aware of what the role that Saudi plays, and they're very, and then they don't appreciate the level of antagonism they get from their northern border for sure. Medea probably wants to add on to that.
Well, I was just going to add that the number of attacks have gone down tremendously since, the height was 2010. 2011 they went down, 2012 they went down, and it has only been 16 so far this year. But 3 of them were in the last week. So it's very strange. They have been going down as there's been more protests here in the United States about them, inside Pakistan and Yemen, and worldwide, and also more attention at the United Nations. But it is where those conspiracy theorists go. Because when the President Hadi came to the United States, that's when there were 3 drone strikes. So here he is in the U.S. Negotiating what the future of the U.S.-Yemeni relationship is, and it's like, the other thing that I didn't mention is that this National Dialogue Committee, the conference, it took up the issue of drone strikes. And it is composed of all the political parties, including the President's party. Now, the President, Hadi, has been in favor of drone strikes. And his, at the National Dialogue, there has been, it went through a committee, another committee, and then to the entire conference. And the entire conference voted overwhelmingly to say that drone strikes are illegal. And so you have this very strange situation where the U.S. taxpayer, us, and the U.S. government is supporting this National Dialogue Conference as a way to build the transition to democracy in Yemen, bringing representatives from as a diverse background as possible, and you have the one president who really wasn't elected. I mean, he was the only one on to vote for. He is the one who is meeting with Obama and saying, yes, keep doing these drone strikes. So it's another incredible example of how the U.S. doesn't listen to the will of the majority represented by this larger conference, but listens to pretty much a puppet that they have in place.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Yasmina, and my question is for Jeb. It's a bit more personal. But what words of advice do you have for a student journalist like myself who wants to work in the Middle East as a reporter?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, I kind of...
Learn how to work on generators.
Yeah. The best thing what I did essentially was go to Yemen, and then I got lucky because the revolution broke out and I started writing about it. So, but the best thing to do is just to go and go talk to editors, email editors, call editors at whatever publication you want to write for, and don't write for free. Seriously, don't write. It's bad for everybody. Don't do it. And ask editors if where their interests are in certain countries, where they're taking copy from, where they don't have a lot of copy. If they say, if you find a consensus among editors that they want more copy from certain areas, tell them you're going and go. And when you get there, start filing. That's pretty much what I did. So if you can get a consensus from editors that they want stuff, give it a shot. And if it doesn't work out, make sure you have enough money left to get back home.
And I have a follow-up question. If I read correctly, you studied Arabic at Georgia State.
Yes.
Because I've seen you speak there too, and I'm doing the same thing. And when you went to Yemen, how was your Arabic? On what level was your Arabic then?
Well, I studied Arabic in Yemen before I was a journalist, so
Okay.
So I think my Arabic, it definitely gave me a competitive advantage, against other reporters, for sure. So you should, if your Arabic's good and if you feel confident enough to use it, then definitely use that resource. And because you have a real advantage over people who don't speak the language, because they're stuck following their fixers all over the place and they have no clue what's going on, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question for Medea. You know, when you went and asked President Obama the question, I didn't know if you realized that you really rocked, you know, the world in the U.S., especially among women and among Democrats. For the first time everywhere, Democrats were able to really start talking about drones. Before you had asked that question, you know, I as a Democrat, you know, if you even mentioned drones, you know, you were shut down immediately, ostracized, etc. I'm wondering, you know, and we all rushed to our TVs and the airwaves to try and hear his response, and I was very embarrassed to hear, you know, Obama's staff, I would imagine, who were laughing, or supporters, you can hear them on mic, laughing to your question and belittling, you know, in that response. And so I would like for you to talk about, were there any Democrats or any folks who came out and talked to you and said, thank you for asking the question, or I'm so sorry you might have been belittled, or anything like that? Any woman?
Well, for those who didn't see or hear the exchange, he actually said that he called me a young lady. I'm 10 years older than he is, so I wasn't sure that was a put down or a compliment. Probably put down. But he did say her voice is worth listening to, and that, I think, was a very positive response, because it gave me a lot more credibility when I went out and talked. And there were people afterwards. I did interviews on CNN and Washington Post, New York Times, and others. And there, you could just totally divide the reporters. One set of reporters, all they wanted to focus on is, isn't it rude to interrupt the president? And so, you know, I kind of had my answer there. I think it's rude to kill people with drones without giving them a chance for a trial. I think it's rude to down people's noses instead of, you know, giving them justice in Guantanamo. But then there was another group that really actually wanted to talk about the issue. And so I think it had a tremendous effect in opening up that discussion more. And I felt really good about the fact that since then, I have had a lot of people say a similar thing to what you said, which is they found it now acceptable to talk to their Democratic friends about this and criticize Obama. Even people who like Obama criticize this part of Obama's program. They felt that it gave them the opening to do that.
I just finished yesterday reading Reza Aslan's book, How to Win a Cosmic War, and he says that the single greatest way, or the single most effective way to defeat what he calls global jihadism, which is his term for what people nebulously call Al-Qaeda or radical Islam, whatever, is democracy. You know, in predominantly Muslim countries. And I'm just wondering, obviously the administration didn't get that. The past administration didn't get it. Is there anybody within our government that, you know, that gets it and that we can try to support to push the administration to start actually supporting democratic movements rather than undermining them?
Well, it's a good question, and I don't really know. I must say that I've actually been impressed with John Kerry since he's come in. And I know a lot of my friends are, you know, doing that exact thing. John Kerry, see, my friends are doing that thing.
he didn't have to take on the Israel-Palestine issue. Most have avoided it. And he took it on. Do I think he'll be successful? No, because I think there's too many forces aligned in this country that force the United States to be taking a very one-sided approach to that conflict. But the fact that he's willing to spend his political capital working on such an intractable issue, I think is actually a good thing. I think that our State Department has, despite having a strong person like Hillary Clinton in that position before, the State Department as a whole has been withering in terms of its resources, in terms of its influence, and I think this has been happening now even before 9/11. It's part of what is the huge weight that the military-industrial complex has, and the State Department actually becoming almost a wing of that instead of its own diplomatic force. So I think there are certainly people, I mean, Jeb talked about Rand Paul with his 13-hour filibuster around drones and how jaw-dropping that was to see and hear. And if you look at the strange bedfellows that are coming together now in the Congress, just look at the vote around the NSA trying to rein in the NSA that happened just last week. It was a pretty astounding vote that 205 to 217, it lost by a tiny margin, and that would have said we do not want the NSA to be gathering this huge amount of data on American citizens without probable cause. That was a coalition of libertarian Republicans who don't like the Big Brother state, and Democrats who, for the most part, would consider themselves progressive Democrats. I think that's where we have to find the coalitions to be supporting these days. And I think it's the same issue around foreign policy, that we'll find those strange bedfellows in that grouping of people that should have been very outspoken, the progressive Democrats against Obama, but have been pretty quiet for years and are just feeling now the pressure because of the NSA issues. I think if we expand this into the larger government overreach with the drone program, with the militarization of our police forces, all of that, we can be supporting that coalition.
What about the NDAA and how it ties into this picture of what's happening in Yemen? We have drones here now, coming. We have an NDAA that's signed by Obama. It's the law of the land. And why don't you tell what NDAA says?
What?
National Defense.
Are you referring to the part that says that you can hold American citizens indefinitely?
What else?
Well, it says a
No
lot.
lawyers, no trials, no habeas corpus, no fair. I mean, isn't it the same? I see it's symmetry, so I mean.
Well, there are people who say that a lot of what we have been doing to prisoners in Guantanamo and what we've been doing with the drone strikes overseas is a test case for what our government can do here at home in terms of holding people indefinitely without charges, without trials, using the drones to have a 24/7 surveillance society. And I think all of that is true, but it really depends on how much we're going to sit back and allow it to happen. And I see that there is more movement and more of this, the strange bedfellows that I talked about within Congress, you're also finding in the grassroots. And I've been to more demonstrations by strange people that I have never been to demonstrations before with, that have been fascinating. And groups like Restore the Forest, I don't know if you have it here, but they have been having groups cropping up all over the country. And we come out to those demonstrations and nobody knows anybody else. And it's really kind of cool. And there are people who come forth because of things like NDAA and NSA spying, but once you're there, you can talk to them about a lot of these foreign policy issues as well.
Yeah, Dr. I just wanted to ask you if you felt that, is there something that Democrat and local people, for those of us who are tied in this community under the, because this is the home of the military industrial complex, 24 Gordon, SRS, and the like, and the Chamber of Commerce and the like. Do you not, what can we, because again, we're in the ultimate red state, you know, in the ultimate red, one of the redder county than it should be. What can we do? What should we do?
Well, I would like some local activists here to answer that.
I'm the conspiracy theorist, don't attack me.
Okay, as a local activist, I can see that you're a progressive Democrat in America, and I am a letter dropper for Congressman Clyburn's office, and yes, you can bring a letter to his office or in Georgia and say, and question, actually to his staff and get a response.
What other things?
Well, I would love for you to relate the story about Seattle, I think it was, that you told us. And just hearing that and looking at the book is reminding me that, yes, we will probably be walking in to the offices of our local folks because we want them to know what our ideas are about the restrictions and what are they thinking, because we're seeing so much more about militarization of our police forces happening across the nation. So, you know, I would say, first of all, join us with our voices to tell them that concern, whether it's with the chief of our police or it's our local elected officials. When there's militarization of police happening, that's going to affect all of us in this room. But there's a story, I think, about, was it Seattle, the main?
Well, I can tell that, but I think Lorraine wants to
I
answer
would
it.
like to address this issue, which is right. First, I think if you're very interested in these issues, the best thing you can do is join the CSRI Peace Alliance and come to the meetings where we can brainstorm with you on important issues that we can address locally. For example, the issue about the vote on the NSA. I checked the vote. Strangely enough, 205 against, or however it was, 205 for passage of the amendment, 212 against. That's a difference, 217, 12 votes difference. There were 12 abstentions. What a coincidence. I wonder what happened to those 12 people. Interesting to know. Representative Brown voted for the amendment, and Barrow voted against it. I would have expected just the opposite. There's a petition right now on the internet. Protest to Congressman Barrow. What the heck are you thinking? You know, why are you voting this way? I do online petitions all the time, and I get responses from all of them. And I go down to their offices, and when there are meetings, public meetings, you know, I go. They know my face, you know, because they know my name, and I go and I introduce myself, and, you know, Barrow goes to my church, and, you know, I'm always confronting him, okay? Our local representatives are very accessible, as you probably already know. Of course, because I recognize you from some other events. But join the CSRI Peace Alliance and let's try to work together on these particular issues. And, oh, by the way, I'm thinking about joining starting a local Veterans for Peace chapter. And I think a lot of the veterans in the group might be interested in maybe participating in that. That's a very interesting organization. You can look up online if you need more information. Thank you.
And if I could, just very quickly, I would hope that you would also consider joining the Progressive Democrats of America.
I'm going to jump on this issue too. I think any time that we can voice our resistance to what we see going on, we really need to do that. I'll give you a case example from Columbia, South Carolina. The Women in Black Vigil, the anti-war vigil that started even before the Iraq War started. And we know that the Republican Party sent out hired bell ringers to orally torture them, if constantly ringing a bell to try to scare them off and drive people off. Well, they persisted. What did the Republican Party know that we don't know? That voice of dissent, that voice of resistance is powerful and stops, you know, the powers that be from doing whatever they want. Every time that you can voice opposition to what's going on, you stop them from doing the next thing and the next thing that they want to do. And that's why that voice of opposition, that voice of resistance is so very important. some of the, I forget, I think it's Daniel Berrigan, and I want to say Thich Nhat Hanh, but I'm not sure the other person, discussed having communities of resistance. This is when they saw that this might be a very long haul to work for peace. So definitely support your local organizers, your local peace groups. Whatever groups are working for that change, please get involved with them and support them, because that's what we need to raise those voices of resistance.